Hello and welcome to the Excel VBA Functions Series. And this is the last video in this series. If you're watching this, it's probably because you've seen all the other videos or some of the other videos. So you know that we have seen the difference between Excel functions, Excel worksheet functions, and VBA functions. So this series is all about VBA functions. Then we've seen some, at the beginning we started with some string functions like left, right, mid, in string, a very useful function, replace, and some other string functions. We've also seen array functions. Then in some other video, we've seen date functions, and then time functions, and then numerical functions and conversion functions. So in this last video, I'm just gonna cover some important functions, some of the remaining functions that I think they are important, just a few of them. There are still many more, but I will not really go into each of them because actually I do not really use many of the VBA functions, so I don't think they are that useful. So in this video we'll talk about some file functions, also the message and input box. They are also VBA functions. We've seen those before, of course, and also the error function. So let me go to the Visual Basic Editor. So there are a few useful file functions. One of these is dir for directory. So we can use the function dir to get different things about the directory where we have the files. And for that we need a file path. And let's say we want to get the path for this workbook that I have open now, or the active workbook. So this would be this workbook or active workbook. Or if you want some specific workbook, you would say workbooks and the name of the workbook dot path. So this is giving the path for this workbook, which is book 1. And let me show you that here. Path. So this workbook is in C, user, administrator, documents, blah, 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 all of there. Now, what we can do with dir is, among other things, we can get, for example, we can get the file directory, and we can also get it from the file path. It's the last folder. We've seen how to do that manipulating the string, because this is a string. You can, for example, split it and get the last element. But it's easier to do it with dir. We can just do dir. We put here the file path, and we can use one of these parameters here for the dir function. So for example, we want to get the directory, just only the directory, the folder where this file is stored. Then I can use dir, and if I display this, it will give me only the folder, right? So this, we are talking about functions. So yeah, so we have this file in a folder called functions. We can also get, for example, the volume for the file path. Again, the volume name. So we've seen earlier that it was C. The drive was C. Now we can get the name of the drive if that's useful. It's just another example. So this is called Win10. My C drive is called Win10. So, but a very useful thing we can do with dir is to loop through files in a directory, for example. So let me put this down here. So we're gonna have, let's call it dir files, and this is gonna be using the dir function again with file path along all the files in that directory. We can specify that with, well, backslash, and here would be the name of the file if we want to target a specific file. If we put the asterisk, it's gonna target all the files in that directory. So now this variable is actually gonna have all the files. We can loop through that as long as it is not empty, and we're gonna move using dir again from one to another. So we're gonna loop through each file, and we can show that. Let's put it in a message box, but we could add it to the worksheet line by line, for example. So for example, let's put here in a message box, and now we're gonna say dir files equals dir is gonna move to the next one, and we close the loop. So if I run this, you see we're gonna get the first file in the directory is book one, is this file we are in. But I have some other files there. I have another file which is called VBA Functions Part 2, and then VBA Functions is a Word document. So these are the files in this directory, in the current directory where I have this workbook. You can select any other directory and you can have the list. I've shown that already in another video. I'm gonna leave the link up here. Please have a look there if you want to see a little more about this. Now, there are a few other file-related functions that allow to get more information about the file. And one of these is FileLen, that gets the file length. So we could also get here, for example, let me add it here. We could get the file length with this VBA function, file length, and then here we put the name. And we can also get the file date and time with file date time function. And maybe if we display that here along this, let's put it in another line. Maybe file date first, date and time. And in another line, let's put the file length in bytes. So it will be given in bytes. Then you can convert it to kilobytes or whatever. So if I run now this, you see we get here the name of the file in the first line. Book one is this file. It was created just today at this time, and it has 7,712 bytes, so around 7 or 8 kilobytes. Now the second file here was created and it has around 42 kilobytes, and the third file, which is a Word document, is created in 2023. So that's some information about the file. You can get that with these VBA functions, FileLen, FileDateTime. Now, to get much more about the file system or directories, files, you have to use the file system object. It's a very powerful object in VBA, in Excel and in Windows. You can get a lot of information about the system. You can get the drives, partitions, the space in each partition. You can navigate files and folders in a more advanced way, so to speak. And when it comes about the information about the file, if the file is a workbook, we can get more information about the workbook with the built-in document property. We can get, for example, the author or the person who last updated the file, the last updated date, and a number of other things. I've shown that in some other video. I'm gonna leave the link up here as well, but that's not a VBA function, right? That's a property of the workbook object. Now let's have a look at some other VBA properties. I'm gonna move it here to other dialog functions, for example. And by dialog, I mean a message box and the input box. So you already know these functions, I'm pretty sure. The message box, we've used it so many times, displays a message, but it has some other possibilities. I'll show you briefly here, but I have a video where I explain that, so I'm gonna also leave the link up here. But with the message box function, you not only show a message box, a dialog box, you can also get some input from the user. So you can put that into a variable, and then say message box. For example, you ask the user to proceed, question mark, and then here you see there are a number of possibilities you can have. There are actually 6 types of buttons combination. You can add the OK cancel button, OK only, that's the default. You also have the yes no or the yes no cancel. So there are some possibilities here for proceed. We could have OK cancel or yes no. If you add the plus here, you can also add a type of message. It could be critical, it could be exclamation or information. And this enumeration is also available in my blog under enumerations for the message box. Let's put an exclamation, and you can change a number of things. You can also set the title here. This could be system backup. If I run this, you see we get the message box with the title system backup asking proceed, or do you want to proceed or whatever, with the exclamation symbol, and we can say yes or no. Now we can of course capture that. If confirm is yes, then here we would do whatever, do the backup or whatever we have to do with this. And if it's no, else, or if it's VB no, you can do something else. So that's the message box, but you probably know already about it. I'm gonna leave the link up here to the video where you can see more about the message box and also the input box. The input box is the other VBA function to get, and in this case is to get some input. We've seen we can get some input also with the message box, but with the input box we can get some data, some text or numbers, or even a range. So for example, let's say we want to get the user name. We would use the input box function along with um, enter name or whatever. And this is the title at the top of the input box. We could call it registration. And you can also say the default value and the position of the box if you want. So now we can use this variable for whatever we want to do it. Let me just display in a message box. This was the first message box. Now here we say Adam, and we can use this variable with the name of the user for a registration macro or for whatever we want. So these are some other VBA functions actually, right? Message box, MsgBox, and input box. Now, and finally, let me talk about one other function that it can be useful sometimes, is the error function. And the error function shows what type of error has occurred for trappable errors, for errors that are recognized by VBA. And if used with a parameter, it will show you what error belongs to that code. So there's a list of codes. Let me show you. It is also in my blog under enumerations. This is the full list of errors with the code and the message or the description of the error. And if you go to my blog, you can also click on this and it will bring you to the Microsoft page with some explanation about the error. So there are a lot of errors, as you can see here. And this is the code. If you use this code number with the error function, you're gonna get this. So you could basically list all these errors with a loop. Let me show you like that. If we go for n equals 1 to and to the last, it was somewhere around 300, 400, but not all the codes belong to an error. But let's display the first 10 in a message box. If we put this in a message box, error for code n, we're gonna get the list that we've seen. Well, some of the codes are not associated with a particular error type, so it will say application defined or object defined error. These are not, but for example, number 3, this is the third, return with a goes up. So this is exactly what we've seen here. Number 3 is a return without goes up. Number 5 is invalid procedure. So if we go 4 and then we go 5, this is invalid procedure. And this is, again, what we have here in the list. So you can get this list from my blog. The overflow, out of memory. So there are you can list each of them with the error. But we do not need to do that because we have the list over there. This is how we use error. Let's say we want to get a number from the user with an input box, and we ask the user enter a number. And so now we can do something with this number. We can do some calculation, or we can, for example, let's say we want to show if the number is even or odd. So if num mod 2, and we've learned that in one of the previous videos, the one about numerical functions. If this is 0, then we can display a message saying is even, and else we will display a message saying is odd. So if the user enters a number, let's say number 3, clicks OK. Now it's odd, right? This is working. But now what happens if the user doesn't enter a number, enters some text? Well, it's gonna create an error, right? A type mismatch error. Um, so we can use the error function along with some error handling. We need to add some error handling here. And if you don't know what error handling is, please go back to the tutorial for beginners. There's one chapter there. I think it's chapter 10. The last chapter is about debugging and error handling. It's just 10 chapters, 10 videos. Have a look at those. Those are 10 very important things that you need to know, 10 aspects of VBA programming in Excel that you need to know. One of these aspects is debugging and error handling. So we're going to have here some error handling. On error, go to, let's call it error handler. An error handler is going to be down here. And what we're going to do, when we have an error handler, usually we have an exit sub just before. So this is just a basic routine for error handling. And what we're going to show here is we're going to, in a message box, show the error using the error function, error VBA function, right? So now if I go back and the user enters a wrong thing here, it's going to say type mismatch. This is our error handling together with the error VBA function. It doesn't stop or break the macro, so to speak. Yeah, but it shows the user that this is the error that happened here because you didn't enter. Of course, you could, instead of just showing the error, you could say you have to enter a number or something like that. Another thing that could happen is we have declared this number as an integer, and the user is adding a very long number. So so the error function is now evaluating, it's a different error, and it shows the description for that error, which is an overflow, because this should be declared as a long if we expect to have a long number, a number larger than 32,000 something. So, and I think we can leave it here. We have covered a lot in this series. I hope you enjoyed this series, and thanks for watching.